Marian froze mid-step, her socked foot hovering over the faded Persian pattern, the dim lamplight catching the irregular rise and fall like a small, contained pulse. The room smelled faintly of old wood and lemon polish, scents that had once comforted her but now felt intrusive, clinging to the edges of her awareness. She told herself it was her imagination, that perhaps the floorboards shifted or the padding had bunched under the rug. But even as reason whispered, the bulge sank slightly, then rose again, slow and deliberate, like a chest inhaling in a dark, cramped space. She knelt, fingers brushing the coarse wool, and a shiver ran up her spine at the slight give under her touch. Felt soft, warm even, and not at all like the worn floor beneath. The lamp's glow cast elongated shadows across the room, turning the familiar furniture, bookshelves, the armchair, the low coffee table, into alien silhouettes. A bead of sweat ran down her temple. Marian pulled back, trying to steady her breathing. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the adjoining kitchen and the occasional creak of the floorboards under the house settling. She told herself she was being silly. There's nothing there. Nothing at all. But then a faint sound, soft, wet, almost a sigh, escaped from beneath the rug. She froze. Her pulse ticked in her ears. Couldn't be the cat, she thought. The cat was in the bedroom, curled around a pillow. And even if it weren't, she had never heard such a sound. A quiet, pulsing exhalation, measured and patient. She crouched lower, staring down at the bulge. It shifted again, subtle at first, like the slow heave of something alive. The fabric moved against her fingers as if testing the boundary of its cover. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to flee, but her curiosity pinned her in place. She ran her fingers along the edge of the rug, half expecting a tail, a paw, a small animal. There was nothing, only the soft warmth, the breathing, the subtle pulse beneath the wool. Her skin prickled. The room felt suddenly smaller, the lamplight harsher, the shadows creeping closer to the walls as if inching toward her. The rug rose again, more insistently this time, a gentle mound pushing upward, rhythmic and controlled. Marian's mouth went dry. She wanted to scream but couldn't summon a voice. Her hands hovered over the spot, trembling, fingers itching to push down or pull back. A soft, wet scrape grazed the floor from beneath. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but enough to make her retract her hand in a sudden flinch. Her heart pounded, heavy in her chest. I'm imagining it. I'm imagining it. She edged toward the sofa, grabbing the throw draped over its arm for comfort, pressing it to her chest. The warmth of her own hands did nothing to quell the creeping sense of dread. The bulge pulsed again, this time more deliberately, like it had noticed her retreat. The fabric moved with an odd elasticity, stretching and contracting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Marian swallowed hard, teeth clenching. The lamp flickered, and in that instant she thought she saw a shadow detach itself from the rug, a vague, quivering form that rippled beneath the wool. It vanished as the light steadied. Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. She backed against the sofa, eyes locked on the slow heave, unable to tear herself away. A smell surfaced then, damp, earthy, metallic. She gagged, a wave of nausea washing over her. It's just a mouse. It has to be a mouse. But the pulse beneath the rug was too regular, too methodical to belong to a creature that small. And the warmth, how could a mouse generate that much heat? Marian's fingers scraped along the edge of the rug again, more out of compulsion than courage. She lifted slightly at one corner, enough to peek beneath. The floor was empty. Nothing there but the old pine boards, scuffed and darkened with age. Her breathing slowed a fraction, relief washing over her, until the corner of the rug lifted on its own. Not dramatically, not with force, but with a slow, deliberate patience that suggested awareness. It raised, and the warm, wet pulse beneath it pressed against her vision. She could see a slight indentation like the curve of a spine or several. She tried to rationalize, to tell herself she was hallucinating. But the bulge moved again, unmistakably, curling and stretching as if seeking something. Marian's skin prickled, gooseflesh rising along her arms. She dropped the corner of the rug in terror, stumbling back. The breathing continued, steady now, measured, a quiet exhalation and inhalation that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards themselves. It was patient, waiting for her. Her eyes darted around the room. The walls, the furniture, even the ceiling beams seemed to lean in, listening, holding their breath. The lamplight flickered, elongating her shadow across the walls in grotesque exaggeration. She wanted to move, to run, but her body refused. All she could do was watch. Then, slowly, a part of the rug shifted forward, imperceptibly at first, stretching across the floor like a living thing. Marian noticed the faintest impressions beneath it, delineations that suggested tiny limbs or ribs, movements too intricate to be accidental. She gagged again, stumbling toward the door, but it was as if the rug had sensed her intent. The breathing beneath it quickened, almost excited now, and the mound rose higher, pushing air into the room with a subtle, oppressive weight. She retched onto the carpet, trembling, hands pressed against her mouth. The warmth, the pulse, the wet scrape, all of it converged into a singular awareness. The rug was alive, and it knew she was awake. Marian tried to scream, but no sound escaped. Her chest tightened as if the air itself were being pressed out by an unseen weight. The rug bulged once more, higher, spreading, and the shadow beneath it seemed to pulse independently of the lamp, writhing in a way that defied explanation. She remembered the old floorboards in the hall, the way they used to settle, the faint draft that always came from under the house. And now, with the breathing beneath her feet, the faint scrape, the warmth, she understood. Whatever it was had been here long before she moved in, patient, waiting, hungry for acknowledgement. The final shift came suddenly, almost casually, like a predator testing its prey before striking. The rug lifted completely at the center, forming a shallow dome beneath which the pulse beat faster, faster, until it matched the rhythm of her heart. The fabric quivered as if smiling, alive and satisfied. Then it sank slowly, the room's air returning to its usual chill, the shadows still but elongated, and the breathing reduced to nothing more than a whisper in the floorboards. Marian sank to the sofa, tears streaming, body trembling, unable to move. The rug lay flat again, innocuous, ordinary, betraying nothing of what had moved beneath it. She wanted to call someone, to leave, to confront it, but she knew, in the marrow of her bones, that it had only allowed her to see, to know. And even in the stillness that followed, the warmth beneath the rug lingered, faint but undeniable, like a heartbeat just out of reach. Something had come awake tonight, and it was waiting. She would never step near that rug again, but she knew it would wait for her, always. Eleanor froze, a dish towel clutched in her hand. The scent of lemon polish and damp would filling the kitchen. The ring was crisp, bright, unmistakable. And yet, when she stepped to the front door, pressed her palm against the smooth oak, there was nothing. No visitor, no package. The porch was empty, the evening sky overcast and still. She frowned, tilting her head as if listening through the door itself. The sound came again, the familiar chime, echoing from somewhere deeper within the house. From the walls, perhaps, or the floorboards. It wasn't muffled, not a phantom bounce. It was precise, located somewhere behind her own chest, vibrating against the ribcage as though the house had taken her pulse and matched it to the bell. A low tremor of unease crawled up her spine. Eleanor moved slowly toward the living room, fingers trailing along the banister of the staircase. The house smelled faintly of cedar and dust, the old carpet musty beneath her socks. Light from the table lamp pooled in a circle on the floor, cutting the shadows into jagged, angular shapes. She thought she saw one shift unnaturally, stretching upward like a thin figure leaning over the doorway. She blinked. Nothing. The bell rang again. Closer, louder, sharper. Her heart stuttered. She swore she could hear the chime behind the sofa, under the stairwell, somewhere in the corner of the room where the shadows pooled. Eleanor's mouth went dry. She pressed a hand to her chest, tracing the rapid pulse beneath. She stepped over the rug, her bare feet brushing the worn fibers, and the ringing followed her, moving from left to right in a disjointed, almost playful pattern. Impossible, she told herself. The bell is fixed at the front door. It can't move. But it did. And each time she froze, it rang again, more insistent, almost impatient. Eleanor sat on the edge of the sofa, breathing shallow, listening. She tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a wiring fault, the old house's creaks and groans amplified by the pipes, by the wooden beams settling. But the sound was too clear, too articulate, too humanly knowing. It had rhythm, pattern, and awareness she could feel in her bones. The lamp flickered. She reached out to steady it, and the ringing responded. A beat after her touch, soft at first, then louder, echoing from the far corner of the room, where the shadows pooled against the wall. Eleanor's stomach lurched. She had the sudden, irrational thought that the house was listening. Every footstep she had taken, every breath she had drawn, recorded and measured, waiting for her to respond. She rose slowly, fingertips grazing the edge of the armchair. The bell chimed again, now perfectly timed with her own heartbeat. Ding ding, her pulse raced to match it. She stopped moving. The house seemed to exhale through the floorboards. Dust motes hung in the lamp's light, trembling as if alive. The sound shifted again, moving into the hallway toward the bedroom. Eleanor took the stairs slowly, one careful step at a time, the railing slick under her hand. Each chime rang from a different direction now. Behind her, above, beneath the landing. She wanted to call out, to tell herself it was nothing, but the words lodged in her throat. A subtle vibration moved through the walls, a soft resonance that harmonized with the bell. She could feel it, more than hear it, a pressure in the air pressing at her temples. At the top of the stairs, Eleanor paused. The hallway stretched before her, lined with faded wallpaper and photographs of ancestors she barely recognized. The light from the stairwell lamp didn't reach the end, leaving it in shadow. And from there, the end of the hall, the bell rang again, impossibly near. Her breath trembled. The sound had grown intimate, personal. Speaking a language she didn't understand but felt compelled to obey. She turned her head toward her bedroom, toward the closed door at the far side. The ringing came from within her own room. Eleanor's hands shook as she reached for the doorknob. The air around her had grown thick, scented faintly of iron and old books, the way it had been in her childhood attic, in spaces no one had touched for decades. The bell rang again, slower now, deliberate, each chime echoing against the skin of her ears, vibrating down her spine. She forced the door open. The bedroom was empty. Sheets were undisturbed, the wardrobe doors closed. The lamp flickered weakly, casting shadows that stretched and recoiled as if breathing. And then she realized, the ringing wasn't coming from the bell at all. It was coming from the room itself, from the air, from the walls, from inside her. Eleanor stumbled backward, heart hammering. The sound circled her head now, omnipresent, rising and falling with the weight of her own fear. She pressed her palms to her ears, but the ringing persisted, inside her skull, a pulse she could no longer separate from her own heartbeat. The room seemed to constrict, the walls leaning slightly inward, the ceiling dipping toward her. The photographs on the walls began to seem wrong, the faces too lifelike, eyes that glimmered in the lamplight. One of them, a portrait of a man she did not know, smiled just a little too widely, the lips shifting as the bell rang. Eleanor blinked, froze normal again. She touched the frame. It was cold, inert, and then a whisper threaded through the sound, soft, disembodied, unmistakable. You're inside. You've always been inside. Eleanor's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, pressed against the edge of the bed. The ringing had slowed, synchronized now perfectly with her own heartbeat, so that each chime felt like a hammer against her chest. Her vision swam. The shadows in the room stretched toward her, folding over the corners, wrapping around the furniture, moving like water. The house itself seemed to pulse with awareness, a living organism, and she was the intruder within it. She tried to leave, but the hallway had vanished. The staircase, the doorways, the walls, everything was a shifting geometry she could not navigate. Each chime now carried memory with it, intimate recollections she hadn't shared, fears she had buried, thoughts she hadn't admitted even to herself. She understood with a sinking certainty that the house was not just listening. It was inhabiting her. The bell rang again. Close now, so close it was indistinguishable from her own breath. She felt the vibration in her chest, the vibration in her bones, and a horrifying clarity arrived. The house had been waiting, not for her to open the door, but for her to exist inside it, to merge with its walls, its floors, its timbers. Eleanor realized she had been inside the house all along, and now, in this final, suffocating clarity, it was inside her. The lamplight flickered once more, the shadows pooling around her. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the sound was no longer external. It was hers. She could feel the chime in her throat, in her chest, in the very marrow of her bones. And as she sank into the floor, a slow, steady pulse echoing in every part of her, she understood with terrifying intimacy. The bell had never been outside. It had never been anything but her heartbeat, amplified, extended, and waiting. The house exhaled around her, and she exhaled back.